Alright, let's dive into something that's got a lot of Aussies on edge right now, the housing market. And no, I'm not here to just throw numbers at you. What's happening is way more interesting than that. Here's the deal, tens of thousands of Australians, especially first-home buyers, are staring down the barrel of a potential $2.2 billion wipeout. Sounds dramatic, right? But what makes this really interesting is why this is happening and what it says about the bigger picture. First off, let's talk about the 5% deposit scheme. Personally, I think this was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a lifeline for young Aussies trying to get their foot on the property ladder. I mean, saving for a deposit is brutal, and this scheme made it possible for over 34,000 people to buy their first home. But here's the kicker, when you put down just 5%, you're already in a vulnerable position. And now, with property values dropping by $230 billion in just 4 months, a lot of these buyers are at risk of negative equity. That means their homes are worth less than what they owe on their mortgages. Ouch. What many people don't realize is that this isn't just a personal finance issue, it's a systemic one. The government's 5% deposit scheme has effectively put taxpayers on the hook for $11 billion in liabilities. If you take a step back and think about it, this raises a deeper question. Are we solving the housing affordability crisis, or are we just kicking the can down the road? In my opinion, this scheme feels like a band-aid solution that's now exposing some serious cracks in the system. Now, let's talk about the bigger trends here. Interest rates are through the roof, the economy is flagging, and tax changes have thrown fuel on the fire. Morgan Stanley is predicting a 10% drop in property values, which could wipe out more than double the original deposit for these first-home buyers. That's not just a financial hit, it's a psychological one. Imagine buying your dream home, only to realize 6 months later that it's worth less than what you paid. It's got to feel like the rug's been pulled out from under you. But here's where it gets even more fascinating, listings are skyrocketing. You'd think a slump would mean fewer properties on the market, right? Wrong. SQM research shows listings have jumped by 30,000 nationwide. Sydney's Southwest, for example, saw an 11.4% jump in just 1 month. What this really suggests is that there's a disconnect between what's happening at the macro level and what individual homeowners are doing. Are people panicking and selling? Or is this just a natural correction after years of insane growth? Personally, I think it's a mix of both, and that's what makes this moment so unpredictable. Now, let's talk about the political spin. Labour is playing down the fears, with acting Prime Minister Richard Marles calling the slump overstated. He's doubling down on the idea that their policies are helping young Aussies get into the market. But here's the thing, while it's true that more first-home buyers are getting keys to their homes, the question is, at what cost? If you're buying at the peak of the market with a tiny deposit, you're essentially gambling on prices going up. And when they don't, you're left holding the bag. From my perspective, this isn't just a housing issue, it's a generational equity issue. What's really striking to me is how this connects to broader economic trends. Inflation is still high, interest rates are unlikely to drop anytime soon, and unemployment, while low now, could rise if the economy weakens. If that happens, those in negative equity could be forced to sell at a loss. And that's when this becomes a serious problem, not just for individuals but for the entire economy. It's like a domino effect, one falling piece could take down a lot more. So, where does this leave us? Personally, I think this is a wake-up call. The housing market isn't just about buying and selling property, it's about people's dreams, their financial security, and their trust in the system. If we're not careful, we could end up with a generation of homeowners who feel betrayed by the very policies meant to help them. And that's a story that goes way beyond Australia, it's a cautionary tale for any country trying to tackle housing affordability. Here's my closing thought. What if the real problem isn't the 5% deposit scheme itself, but the fact that we've built an entire economy around the idea that housing is an investment, not a basic need? Maybe the question we should be asking isn't how to get more people into the market, but how to make housing affordable without turning it into a high-stakes gamble. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on this.